The sound that woke her was her own tent zipper, and she was still inside the tent. Rachel had camped Big Cypress a dozen times. She grew up in South Florida. She'd done solo trips since she was 20, and the swamp didn't scare her the way it scares people who didn't grow up with it. She knew the gators stayed in the water at night. She'd set up on a dry hammock, a little island of high ground, the way you're supposed to. Cooked, hung her food, zipped in around 10. She woke at 2 in the morning to the sound of the zipper on her tent door moving, slowly, tooth by tooth, from the bottom up, the way you'd open a zipper if you were trying not to wake the person inside. She's done that zipper 1,000 times. She knows exactly what it sounds like from the inside, and she lay there in the dark listening to it climb, one tooth at a time, her whole body going rigid, because a zipper does not open itself. She said the first thing she felt wasn't fear. It was confusion, the pure, stupid disbelief of hearing something that cannot be happening 6 inches from your face. Then the fear came all at once, and it came with a smell. Through the gap in the door, as it opened, came a smell she said she'll never forget. Wet animal. Rot. Like a wet dog that had rolled in something dead, but heavier, thicker, filling the tent. Whatever was working, that zipper was close enough that she was breathing it in. She did the only thing her body would let her do. She screamed. Not a word, just everything she had. The zipper stopped, and then something big moved away from the tent. Not fast, heavy. She heard it step off the hammock into the shallow water at the edge. 1, 2, 3 heavy steps, each one a deep, wet sound. And then the swamp swallowed it and there was nothing. She did not move until the sun came up. 4 hours, sitting upright holding a folding knife, watching the tent door. At first light, she made herself look. The zipper was open 8 inches from the bottom. She had zipped it shut. And in the soft mud at the edge of the hammock, where she'd heard it step into the water, there were impressions. Big, deep, pressed into ground that only holds a print from real weight. She didn't photograph them. She told me she was too busy leaving. She packed and hiked out, and she has never camped alone again. And the part she can't get past isn't the smell or the sound. It's that whatever it was knew how to work a zipper. Slowly, quietly, from the bottom up, like it had done it before. Something that opened her tent zipper 1 tooth at a time, trying not to wake her. A smell like rot and wet animal. And prints in the mud too heavy to be anything she could name. Before the next account, tell me what time it is where you are right now. Drop it in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there in the dark tonight. And I read and reply every single one. We're pushing toward 10,000 subscribers before the end of the month. If this account means something to you, hit subscribe. Everyone counts. Thanks. And here's what I can't answer. It worked that zipper slowly, quietly from the bottom up. The way something does when it doesn't want you to wake up. Was that an animal that had learned tents mean food? Or is it worse that it wasn't trying not to scare her? It was trying not to warn her. Drop your answer below. There's a kind of dark you only get miles into the Everglades, and Danny was lying in the middle of it when he felt the platform move under him. If you've never done the Wilderness Waterway, here's what you need to know. You kayak in, miles from any road, and you sleep on a chickee, a wooden platform built on stilts over the water, because there's no dry land. Just a platform, a roof, and black water on every side. Danny had done it 4 times. The isolation was the whole point. That night there was no moon, and he said the dark was so complete he couldn't see his own hand. He woke around 1 because the platform shifted. A chickee is solid, built to hold people in gear and not move. But it moved, a slow dip, like weight coming onto one edge of it. the way a dock dips when someone steps onto it from a boat. Danny froze. He was alone. There was no boat. There was no way onto that platform except by climbing up out of the water. The platform dipped again. Something was pulling itself up onto the far corner. He couldn't see anything in that total dark, but he could hear it now. Water running off something large. A wet, dragging sound as weight came up over the edge of the boards. And then breathing. Heavy, slow breathing. Maybe 8 feet from where he lay, sharing a platform the size of a small bedroom with him in absolute darkness. He had a headlamp in his hand. He said the hardest thing he's ever done was decide whether to turn it on, because if he did, he'd see it, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. He turned it on. The beam caught the far corner, and there was nothing there, but the boards were wet in a wide, dragging smear that led back to the edge, and the water below was still moving, rocking against the stilts like something had just slid back under. Whatever had been there had gone the instant the light came on. Fast. Silent. Back into the black water it climbed out of. Danny sat with his back to the center post and his light on for the rest of the night, turning it at every small sound. He said the worst part was knowing it was still down there, in the water, all the way around him, and that the platform was the only thing he had. At first light, he loaded his kayak in about 90 seconds and paddled 6 hours without stopping. He never found out what climbed onto that platform. He knows it was big enough to move a structure built not to move. He knows it climbed up out of the water on purpose, toward the only person out there, and he knows it left the second it lost the cover of the dark. Something heavy enough to tilt a platform built on stilts that climbed up out of the black water toward him and vanished the instant his light came on. Here's what I keep turning over. It only left when the light hit it, which means it didn't want to be seen. Does that tell you it was an animal that panics at light and he got lucky? Or is it worse that it knew exactly what a light meant, waited for a moonless night on purpose, and left not out of fear, but because the dark was the whole plan? Tell me which one you believe. The last account is the only one where 2 people saw it at the same time, a guide and his client, out before dawn. And it's the only one where somebody got a good, long look. That's next. 22 years running airboats in the Everglades, and the first time Cole ever turned the boat around and refused to go back was a Tuesday morning before the sun came up. He ran pre-dawn tours. You go out in the dark so you're deep in the backcountry when the sun rises and the wildlife's still moving. He'd done it thousands of times. That morning, he had one client, a quiet guy from out of state, and they were idling through a narrow run of sawgrass, maybe 40 minutes in, waiting for the light. Cole's spotlight swept the bank the way it always does, and it stopped on something standing in the sawgrass about 60 feet off the water. He thought bear first. Florida has black bears, and that's what your brain reaches for. But it was standing on 2 legs, and it didn't have the shape of a bear, and it was taller than a bear stands. It was covered in dark, matted hair, hunched, and it was looking at the boat. Both of them saw it. The client grabbed Cole's arm. Neither of them said the word out loud because down there, everybody knows the word, and nobody who works the swamp for a living wants to be the guy who says it. Cole did what 22 years taught him. He held the light on it, because whatever it is, you keep your eyes on it. And it stood there in the beam and let him. It didn't run. It didn't crouch. It watched the boat, hunched in the sawgrass, for what he estimates was 15 or 20 seconds, long enough that he stopped being able to tell himself it was a bear. Then it turned and moved into the sawgrass, not running, a heavy, swinging walk on 2 legs, and the sawgrass, which stands higher than a man, closed over it. He said you could track it for a second by the way the grass moved, a wake pushing away from the water, and then even that stopped. The client didn't say a word the rest of the ride. When they got back, the guy didn't ask for his money back, didn't say, "What did we just see?" Nothing. He got in his car and left. Cole never heard from him again. Cole has never taken a tour down that run since. 22 years of gators, snakes, panthers, storms, everything the Everglades has he's seen, and he can explain all of it. He can't explain the thing in the sawgrass, and he's stopped trying. He'll tell you he doesn't know what it was, but if you push him, he'll tell you one thing he's sure of. It stood there and looked at two men in a boat with a spotlight on it, and it wasn't afraid of them. And in 22 years out there, that's the only living thing he's ever met that wasn't. Something tall, hunched, and covered in hair that stood in a spotlight and watched two grown men without a trace of fear. Here's the real question. Every wild animal in that swamp fears a boat and a light. A guide of 22 years will tell you that's the one constant. So what does it mean that this thing didn't? Was it just too big to have any predators, so fear was never wired into it? Or is it worse than that? That it wasn't afraid because it had seen boats and lights and men before and learned there was nothing to fear? Tell me which answer keeps you up. Subscribe to Obscure Nights right now. 3 people. 3 different corners of the same swamp. A woman on a hammock, a man on a platform, a guide on a boat. None of them ever met. Here's what connects them, and it's not the shape, it's the behavior. Every one of these came out of or near the water. Everyone approached a person on purpose instead of avoiding them. The exact opposite of what every real animal in that swamp does. And everyone left the moment it was about to be clearly seen. The scream, the headlamp, the spotlight. Whatever these people ran into, it was comfortable in the dark and it did not like being looked at. I'm not going to tell you what it was. I don't know, and neither did they. But here's the practical part, because the swamp is a real place with real dangers, and these keep you alive whether what's out there is unknown or just a very large alligator. Lesson 1. On the water is the danger, day or night. Camp on the highest dry ground you can find. Keep well back from the edge and never set your tent where the bank meets the water. Everything that can hurt you down there comes from the water, and distance from the edge is the best protection you have. Lesson 2. A light is your best tool, so keep one in your hand, not your bag. In all 3 of these, light ended the encounter. Sleep with a headlamp within reach of your hand, not zipped in a pack you have to find in the dark. The few seconds it takes to locate a light are the few seconds you may not have. Lesson 3. If something is interested in you out there, do not try to see it and do not go toward it. Make yourself loud, make yourself bright, make yourself a problem, and then leave the first moment it's safe to move. Curiosity is what gets people hurt in the swamp. You don't need to know what it is. You need to be somewhere else. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. If you have an encounter of your own, our submission email is in the channel bio. We read every single one. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.